Well, welcome as we continue to read and understand the book of Revelation, reading and understanding the message in order to understand the meaning. What does it say? What does it mean? Confident that we can read and understand the book of Revelation. In chapters 12 through 16, John is revealing the contents of the little scroll, open and ready to be revealed immediately. John is writing near the end of the first century. The events being described occurred near the end of the first century. Remember that this is part 2 of the central vision of the book, 2 scrolls, one closed with seals opened by the Lamb, the little open scroll with John instructed to prophesy without delay after the 7th trumpet. In this little scroll are 3 signs. Chapter 12, a woman with child. Chapter 12, also a dragon, Satan. And chapter 15, 7 angels with 7 plagues. Who are the characters that we will encounter in this scroll? Well, we meet the woman representing God's believing community. We studied in chapter 12 that woman, God's community, the child Jesus, the dragon, Satan wanting to destroy the child, the other children of the community, referring to individual Christians. We also saw Michael defeat Satan in a heavenly battle. In our chapter today, we meet 2 beasts, allies of Satan, empowered by Satan to make war against the saints. The beast is undoubtedly the same one we saw briefly as the 2 witnesses were killed in chapter 11. This will be confirmed, incidentally, when we get to chapter 17, specifically in verse 8. The beast represents Rome, the Roman Empire. The 7 heads represent individual Roman emperors. This also is clarified in chapter 17. The 10 horns likely represent vassal kingdoms. See 17:12. Perhaps the number is symbolic, not literal. We're reading apocalyptic literature, symbols. The various emperors claimed divinity, supernatural powers, and that was blasphemous. The beast gets his power and authority from the dragon, that is, from Satan. Unsuccessful in his assault on the church, Satan recruits allies. Satan does his work through human agents. The Lamb will combat those efforts through human agency. The first beast, the sea beast, appears to have recovered from a deadly wound. According to 13:3, John is describing Rome. This verse likely refers to the Nero Redivivus myth that was current in the late 1st century. Here's the detail. Nero committed suicide in AD 68 after being condemned to death by the Roman Senate. The rumor soon circulated that Nero was not dead and that he would return to punish the empire. By the time John wrote, the myth had shifted, and the claim that Nero would return from the dead to fight against Rome. John does not accept or support the myth, but his description makes clear that his reference is to Rome. We see that also in chapter 17, verse 11. The limited regional persecution of the church ended when Nero died, but was being revived more broadly with even more intensity when John wrote. The world followed the siren song of the dragon and the beast. Chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. The reference is not to Nero's limited persecution. The most likely historical candidate, the timing that is most likely, is the persecution under Domitian, who was the emperor who required emperor worship. Chapter 13 and verse 8. Domitian had statues erected to him and required worship at his shrine. Christians would not comply, which would explain then John's admonition in chapter 13, verses 9 through 10, to endure. The battle is between Satan, Rome, and the Christians. We know that Christians suffered and were killed, and eventually, as history unfolds, those doing the killing will be killed. But until then, Christians are to patiently endure, awaiting God's vindication of their faithfulness. Often faith is best seen in trying circumstances. In 13, 11, and 12, another beast is introduced, appearing as a lamb, but with the voice of a dragon, an imitation of the lamb, perhaps suggesting a religious figure. His task is to cause people to worship the first beast. This second beast possibly symbolizes the priests of the emperor cult of the Roman Empire. The beast is later called the false prophet in the references in chapter 16, verse 13, chapter 19, verse 20. How does the beast cause people to worship the emperor? The answer is given in 13 through 15. False miracles, lies, deceit, idolatry, the threat of death. Chapter 13, verses 16 through 18 describe exclusion from buying and selling, lack of the necessities of daily life for those who would not receive the symbol or the mark, the name of the beast, the number of his name. Now, since this passage has been variously explained, come near the end of chapter 13, this passage deserves an expanded but brief explanation setting forth some possibilities. Many seek to identify specific historical figures by assigning numerical values to the letters of a name and adding the values to derive a numerical value. The Greek name for Nero, for example, transliterated into Hebrew, adds to 666. A textual variant in the Greek text, 616, also points to Nero as a possibility in Latin. One can wonder how easily the readers would have understood such coding, but a discovery at Qumran, site of the Dead Sea Scrolls, with Nero Caesar spelled to equal 666 in Aramaic, suggests that the possibility may not be far-fetched. John writes that 666 is man's number, or the number of a man, identifying humanity, not divinity. 6 is short of the perfection of 7. A document from the same time period refers to Christ as 888. The point that is beyond doubt is that the beast is both human and evil. The mark of the beast is the counterpart of the mark or seal of God in chapter 7 and other references during the sounding of the trumpets. The mark of God identified his people and placed them under his authority, his protection. The mark of the beast sought to identify the followers of the beast, and of course, in neither case are the marks or the seals literal or visible. The historical context is the Roman persecution of Christians near the end of the first century. The little scroll is shorter than the scroll unsealed by the Lamb. The stage is already set, pointing toward the climax. We're ready for the rest of the little scroll. It will unfold very quickly. The text clearly refers to Rome, that which is going to happen soon. And as we hear that phrase repeated again and again in the book of Revelation, let us remember that the early church generally believed that the return of Jesus and the end of the world would occur soon. Let us read and understand the book of Revelation through first century eyes, and not only through our knowledge now that 20 centuries have passed. His coming is still soon. While the primary message is for the recipients, there is an application for us. The Lord knows those who are his. He also knows those who will defy his will. Life in this world is characterized by the battle between the forces of evil and the forces of good, and it is still appropriate that we as Christians endure with faithfulness as we seek to follow our Lord and Master Jesus Christ. Looking forward to continuing our study in chapter 14 in the next video. God bless as you seek to read and understand the book of Revelation.